I bought a house with my own life savings and gave it to my daughter, Isabella, and my son-in-law, Brandon, so they could build a better life. I worked for 30 years cleaning offices, taking care of the elderly, and washing other people's laundry. I saved every single dollar I could, sacrificing everything a mother can sacrifice. And when I finally managed to gather enough for the down payment on that house, I felt that my life had meaning. I thought I was securing my daughter's future. I thought I was being a good mother. But when I went back months later to visit her, I found Isabella crying on the living room floor, her hands swollen and covered in wounds, scrubbing the floor while Brandon screamed at her to hurry up. That day, I discovered that everything had been a trap. And that day, I also decided that no one else was going to trample on my dignity or my daughter's. The story began 6 months earlier, when I finally managed to save the $45,000 for the down payment. I had worked since I was 15 years old. I arrived in this country at 22, without papers, without the language, without anything but my hands and the will to get ahead. Isabella was born here. She had opportunities I never had. She studied hard, graduated from a state university, and landed a good job at a major insurance company. She met Brandon at a sales conference. He was handsome, confident, always dressed in expensive suits and talking about investments and business deals. I never liked him. There was something in his look that made me uncomfortable, something cold. But Isabella was in love, and I didn't want to be that mother who destroys her daughter's dreams. So I silenced my doubts and supported them when they decided to get married. After the wedding, they lived in a rented apartment for 2 years. Isabella worked long hours. Brandon did too, according to him. But I noticed strange things. When I visited them, it was always Isabella who paid for the food, who bought the furniture, who covered the expenses. Brandon always had excuses. That his money was tied up in investments, that he was waiting on a big deal to close, that soon everything would change. One day, Isabella came to my house crying. She told me they were months behind on rent, that Brandon had used their savings to invest in a business that never took off, and that they were about to lose the apartment. Seeing her like that broke my heart. That night, I didn't sleep. I stayed awake thinking about how hard I had worked, about everything I had put away for my old age, and I made a decision. The next day, I went to the bank. I withdrew everything, every single penny I had saved in 30 years, $45,000 in cash. I told Isabella that we should use that money to buy a house. She cried. She hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. She told me she couldn't accept it, that it was my money, my security, but I insisted. I told her that seeing her happy and secure was the only thing that mattered to me, that a mother doesn't measure her sacrifices, that everything I had was hers anyway. Brandon, when he found out, acted surprised and grateful. He gave me a hug that felt fake, but I accepted it because I wanted to believe he was genuinely happy. He promised me he would take good care of the house and of Isabella. He told me I would always have a place there, that he would never forget what I had done for them. We found a small but pretty house in a quiet suburban neighborhood. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a modest living room, and a kitchen that looked out onto the backyard. Nothing fancy, but it was perfect for starting out. We went through all the paperwork. I put down the entire down payment. The house was put in Isabella's name because she had established credit and could qualify for the mortgage loan more easily. I trusted them. We signed everything at the real estate office on a Tuesday afternoon. I remember Isabella couldn't stop smiling. Brandon was smiling too, but his eyes were scanning the papers with an intensity that made me uncomfortable for a second. I thought he was just excited. I didn't suspect anything else. They moved in 2 weeks later. I helped them pack, clean, and organize the furniture. I spent 3 full days painting the walls with Isabella. Brandon barely showed up. He said he had important business meetings. The day we finished setting everything up, I prepared a special dinner. I made the pot roast that Isabella had loved since she was a little girl, mashed potatoes and green beans. We ate, the 3 of us, at the new dining table Isabella had bought. We toasted with sparkling cider because I don't drink alcohol. That night, when I went back to my apartment, I cried tears of happiness. I felt that all my effort had been worth it. I felt that I had finally managed to give my daughter what I never had, a home of her own. But that happiness lasted very little. The first few weeks, I called Isabella almost every day. She sounded happy. She told me they were settling in well, that Brandon was helping with some minor repairs, that the neighborhood was quiet. But after a month, I noticed her calls became less frequent. When I called her, she answered with a dull voice. Sometimes I heard Brandon yelling in the background. When I asked her if everything was okay, she told me yes, that she was just tired from work. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to think it was normal, that all marriages go through adjustments. But something inside me started to get restless. A mother always feels when something isn't right with her daughter. 3 months passed without me being able to visit them. I work 6 days a week, taking care of an elderly lady who lives on the other side of the city. I use my days off to do my own grocery shopping, wash my clothes, and rest the little I can. I am not young anymore. My knees hurt, my back reminds me of every effort I have made in my life. But I kept calling Isabella, and every call worried me more. Her voice sounded more and more distant. Sometimes she said she couldn't talk because Brandon was resting and she didn't want to make noise. Other times, she cut the call short, saying she had to do something urgent. And when I asked her if I could visit, she always had excuses. That they were very busy, that the house was a mess, that it was better to wait a little longer. Finally, after 4 months, I decided to make a surprise visit. It was a Saturday morning. My boss had given me the weekend off because she had gone on a trip with her family. I took 2 buses to get to the neighborhood where Isabella lived. I carried with me a container of homemade lasagna that I had prepared the night before. I remembered it was her favorite comfort food. As I walked down the street toward her house, I felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. It had been so long since I had seen her, so long since I could hug her. When I arrived in front of the house, I stopped dead in my tracks. The first thing I noticed was that the exterior looked completely different. They had painted the facade a dark gray color that looked elegant but cold. The windows had new, expensive curtains. In the entryway, there were ornamental plants in ceramic pots that must have cost hundreds of dollars. The front lawn was perfectly manicured with decorative stones and recessed lighting in the ground. I stood there, confused. Where had the money come from for all that? I rang the doorbell. No one answered. I rang again. Nothing. Then I heard something that froze my blood. It was Brandon's voice yelling from inside. I couldn't distinguish the words, but the tone was violent, aggressive. Then I heard crying. Isabella's crying. My hand trembled when I rang the doorbell again, this time more insistently. Finally, I heard footsteps. The door opened just a crack, and there was my daughter. But she wasn't the Isabella I remembered. Her hair was dirty and pulled back in a messy ponytail. Her face was pale, gaunt. She had deep, dark circles under her eyes, and her eyes, those eyes that had always sparkled with life, were now red and swollen from so much crying. "Mom," Isabella whispered with a broken voice, "I didn't expect to see you today." She tried to smile, but it was a painful grimace that broke my soul. I tried to enter, but she blocked the door with her body. Behind her, I could see the interior of the house, and what I saw left me speechless. Everything was different, completely different. The floor we had left with simple tile was now luxurious hardwood. The furniture we had bought together was gone. In its place was a massive leather sofa, which must have cost thousands of dollars. A giant television hung on the wall. Modern designer lamps illuminated the living room. It looked like a house from a magazine. But my daughter looked like a ghost wandering through a space that no longer belonged to her. "Isabella, what happened to you?" I asked, trying to touch her face. She pulled away quickly. "Nothing, Mom. I'm fine. I'm just tired from work." But I saw her hands when she moved. Her palms were red and cracked. Her nails were broken. They were the hands of someone who has been scrubbing and cleaning without rest. "Who is it?" Brandon yelled from inside the house. His voice sounded authoritative, annoyed. Isabella tensed up immediately. "It's my mom," she responded with a trembling voice. There was a heavy silence. Then I heard Brandon's footsteps approaching. When he appeared behind Isabella, I almost didn't recognize him. He had gained weight. He was wearing expensive brand-name sportswear, sneakers that must have cost $300. He wore a gold watch on his wrist that shined ostentatiously. He looked me up and down with contempt. Ah, the mother-in-law, he said with a tone that tried to sound friendly but dripped with annoyance. What a surprise. You should have let us know you were coming. I would have told Isabella to fix herself up a bit. He looked at my daughter with disdain. She's a mess. Isabella lowered her head, as if she felt ashamed. I felt the rage starting to climb up my chest, but I held back. Something told me I needed to observe more before acting. Brandon finally let me in. He did it reluctantly, like someone allowing an inferior person to cross the threshold of his palace. I walked in, and my eyes scanned every corner. The transformation was obscene. In the kitchen, there were new stainless steel appliances, an Italian espresso machine that cost over $500, crystal glasses in an illuminated display cabinet. The dining room had a solid wood table with 6 chairs upholstered in velvet. Everything screamed money. Lots of money. More money than Isabella and Brandon could have earned in those few months. I sat on the leather sofa because Brandon indicated for me to do so with a condescending gesture. Isabella remained standing by the kitchen door, as if she were waiting for orders, as if she weren't the owner of that house. Brandon sat across from me with his legs spread wide, taking up all the space he could. So, to what do we owe the honor of your visit? He asked with a fake smile. I came to see my daughter, I responded, trying to remain calm. I haven't seen her in months. Brandon let out a dry laugh. Sure. Isabella has been very busy. Right, babe? He looked at my daughter with cold eyes. Isabella nodded without saying a word. Busy with what? I asked. With keeping this house in order, Brandon replied, leaning back on the sofa. Someone has to do it. I work all day building our future. I can't be wasting time on domestic nonsense. The way he said domestic nonsense made me clench my fists. Isabella has a job too, I said. Brandon shrugged. She quit 2 months ago. We decided it was better for her to dedicate herself to the house. She was more useful here. The word useful sounded like a whip. I looked at Isabella seeking some explanation, but she avoided my gaze. Her eyes were full of held-back tears. Something terrible was happening there. Something my daughter didn't dare tell me. I stayed for 2 hours that first visit. 2 endless hours, where Brandon talked non-stop about his supposed business deals, his investments, how well he was doing. He bragged about every expensive object in the house. I bought the sofa in Italy, he said. Well, I had it imported. It cost $8,000, but it's worth every penny. The television is the latest generation, $4,000. The lamps are from a French designer, $1,500 each. He talked and talked while Isabella remained silent, almost invisible. At one point, she went to the kitchen to make coffee. I followed her with the excuse of helping. When we were alone, I took her hand. Honey, what is going on here? I whispered. She pulled her hand away abruptly. Nothing, Mom. Everything is fine. But her eyes told me the opposite. Isabella, all these things. Where did the money come from? She swallowed hard. Brandon made good investments. He's doing very well. She lied. I knew it because I've known my daughter since she was born. I know when she lies. Before I left, Brandon walked me to the door. Isabella stayed behind cleaning the kitchen. When we were out of her sight, Brandon leaned toward me. His breath smelled of expensive whiskey. Look, old lady, he said in a low and threatening voice. I appreciate that you helped with the down payment on the house, but that doesn't give you the right to come here whenever you want. This is my house now. I run things here. Isabella is fine. She is where she needs to be. So next time you want to visit us, call first. I stared at him. My house? I asked. I thought the house was in Isabella's name. He smiled with malice. Things change, he said. We aren't in those times where you called the shots anymore. Now there is a new order, and in this order, I am the one who makes the decisions. He slammed the door in my face before I could respond. I stood there, trembling. Not from fear, from rage, from powerlessness, from pain for my daughter. I walked toward the bus stop with a broken heart, but also with a determination I hadn't felt in years. Something very bad was happening in that house, and I was going to find out what it was. For the next 2 weeks, I couldn't sleep well. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Isabella's gaunt face, her destroyed hands, her dull gaze. I called her cell phone every day. Sometimes she answered with monosyllables. Yes, No. I'm fine. I have to hang up. Other times, she didn't even answer. The messages I sent her went unanswered for hours or days. I tried to talk to some of her college friends, but none of them had seen her in months. One of them told me that Isabella had stopped answering her calls after getting married, that when she tried to visit her, Brandon told her that Isabella was very busy and that it was better not to bother her. Every piece of information I got confirmed what I already suspected. My daughter was trapped, and Brandon was her jailer. I decided I needed to go back, but this time I wasn't going to warn them. This time I was going to observe without them knowing I was there. I took a day off work. I told my boss I had a family emergency. She is a good woman and gave me permission without problems. The following Wednesday, I took the first bus of the morning. I arrived in the neighborhood at 7:30. I stayed on the corner of the street, hidden behind some bushes from where I could see the house. At 8 in the morning, I saw Brandon leave. He was dressed in a perfectly ironed gray suit. He got into a new car I hadn't seen before, a black sedan that must have cost at least $40,000. He started it and drove off. I waited 20 minutes to make sure he wouldn't come back. Then I walked to the house and rang the doorbell. Isabella opened the door. This time she couldn't hide her surprise or her panic. "Mom, what are you doing here? Brandon is going to get mad. You didn't tell him you were coming. I need to talk to you," I told her firmly. "Now." She looked toward the street as if fearing Brandon would appear suddenly. Finally, she let me in. When I crossed the door, the smell of cleaning products was overwhelming. The floor shined so much I could see my reflection. Every surface was spotless. Isabella closed the door and stood there, nervous, wringing her injured hands. "Daughter, tell me the truth. What is happening here?" She shook her head. "Nothing, Mom. I already told you. I'm fine." "Then why are your hands destroyed? Why did you quit your job? Why are you afraid that your own husband will find out that your mother is visiting you?" Isabella started to cry. She let herself fall onto the sofa and covered her face with her hands. And there, between sobs, she began to tell me the truth that was going to change everything. "It all started a week after we moved in," Isabella said, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. "Brandon arrived one day with a man. He told me he was his business partner, that they were going to make huge investments together, that soon we would have a lot of money. I didn't suspect anything. I trusted him. That night, Brandon asked me to sign some papers. He said they were bank documents, routine things for the house loan. I signed without reading. Mom, I signed without reading." Her voice broke as she said this. I felt my stomach contract. "What papers were they?" I asked, although I already intuited the answer. Isabella sobbed harder. "They were documents transferring ownership of the house to Brandon's name, and others making me responsible for loans he had requested using the house as collateral. Mom, he took out $70,000 in loans. $70,000, and now everything is in his name. I have nothing. The house you bought for me is no longer mine." I froze. $70,000. My mind tried to process what I had just heard. Brandon had used the house I bought with 30 years of work to get into debt. And not only that, he had stolen the property by putting it in his name. "How is it possible that he could do that?" I asked, trying to control the tremor in my voice. Isabella curled in on herself. "He forged my signature on other documents. He has a corrupt notary friend who legalized everything. When I realized it, it was already too late. I went to the bank and they told me the house was registered in Brandon's name as of 3 months ago, that the loans were legal because he is the owner. I tried to talk to a lawyer, but Brandon found out. He took away my phone. He took away my credit cards. He took away all access to money. Now I can't even leave this house without his permission." "And your job?" I asked. "Why did you quit?" Isabella shook her head. "I didn't quit, Mom. He forced me to leave the job. He said a wife should be in the house, that my place was here serving my husband. At first, I refused. Then he started threatening me. He said that if I didn't do what he wanted, he was going to have you deported. He said he had contacts in immigration, that he could invent a story that you were illegal even if you aren't, that they were going to put you in a detention center and then send you back to our country. I couldn't risk it, Mom. I couldn't let him hurt you. So I quit. And since then, I've been here, trapped." Tears ran down my face. My daughter had sacrificed everything to protect me. She had allowed that monster to turn her into his slave for fear that he would hurt me. The weight of that guilt was unbearable. But the money from the loans, where is it? What did he use it for? Isabella pointed around the house. On all this. The furniture, the television, the new car, the expensive clothes. Brandon is obsessed with appearances. He wants people to think he is rich, that he is successful. He spends thousands of dollars on things we don't need just to show off. He goes to expensive restaurants with his friends. He buys bottles of whiskey for $500. He bets on card games. And meanwhile, I have to clean this house from top to bottom every day. If he finds a speck of dust, he yells at me for hours. If the food isn't exactly how he wants it, he throws the plate at me. He has hit me 3 times, Mom. 3 times. And I can't do anything because I have nowhere to go. I don't have money. I don't have a phone. I have nothing. Isabella stood up and rolled up the sleeve of her blouse. On her arm, there were bruises. Some fresh, others already yellowing, in different stages of healing. I felt something break inside me. I stood up and hugged my daughter with all the strength I had. She clung to me and cried like she hadn't cried since she was a child. "Forgive me, Mom," she said between sobs. "I ruined everything. I wasted your sacrifice." "No," I whispered with a firm voice. "You didn't ruin anything. He is a thief and an abuser. But I swear to you by everything that matters to me that we are going to fix this. We are going to get that house back. We are going to get him out of your life, and you are going to be free again." Isabella shook her head hopelessly. "There is no way, Mom. He has all the power. He has the house in his name. He has legal documents. He has contacts. We are nobodies." I grabbed her face and forced her to look me in the eyes. "Listen to me closely. I came to this country with nothing. I survived 30 years doing whatever was necessary. I raised a daughter all by myself. I saved $45,000 cleaning toilets. I am not going to let a parasite like Brandon get away with this. Daughter, I am no longer the same woman who let herself be trampled on. I don't swallow my pride anymore. I don't lower my head anymore. And he is going to learn that the hard way." I stayed with Isabella until noon. We talked about everything that had happened in those months. She told me details that made the level of abuse increasingly clear. Brandon woke her up at 5 in the morning to make him breakfast. If the coffee wasn't perfect, he threw it on the floor and forced her to clean it immediately. During the day, while he was out, she had to clean the whole house, wash clothes, iron his shirts, prepare the food. If something wasn't ready when he arrived at 6 in the evening, there were consequences. Screaming, insults, sometimes blows. Isabella showed me once where Brandon had shoved her against the wall because dinner was lukewarm. She had hit her back and had to endure the pain in silence because he forbid her from going to the doctor. "You can't go out," he had told her. "Nothing happened here. You fell by yourself because you're clumsy." She also told me about the humiliations. Brandon invited friends to the house and made Isabella serve them as if she were a maid. "Bring us beer, make snacks, clean this," and all in front of the guests who laughed at the orders he gave her. Once, one of his friends told Brandon he had his woman well trained. Brandon had replied that a wife must know her place, and Isabella had to endure those words with her head down and tears held back. She told me she barely ate anymore because Brandon controlled all the food. He served himself large portions and left her barely the leftovers. "If you want to eat more, work more," he told her. I looked at my daughter and saw a ghost. Her clothes were too big for her. She had lost at least 20 pounds. Her skin looked grayish. She had a cough that wouldn't go away. But Brandon didn't allow her to buy medicine. He said that was throwing money away. Before leaving, I made Isabella promise me she would hold on a little longer, that she wouldn't do anything drastic, that I was going to find a way to get her out of there, but I needed time to plan things well. She looked at me with eyes full of fear. "Mom, if Brandon finds out you talked to me, that you know all this, he's going to get furious. He can hurt both of us." "I know," I replied. "That's why he isn't going to find out. You are going to keep pretending everything is fine. You are going to keep obeying his orders, and I am going to start moving. But I need you to trust me. I need you to hang on just a little bit more. Isabella nodded. We hugged again. When I left the house, I looked toward the neighbors' windows. I wondered if any of them knew what was happening inside there, if they had heard the screams, if they had seen Isabella crying, or if everyone simply pretended not to see anything because that is easier. That way, they don't have to face the uncomfortable reality that abuse happens everywhere, even in nice neighborhoods with freshly painted houses. I walked down the street with a plan forming in my mind. I needed help. I needed proof. I needed allies. And above all, I needed to understand exactly what documents Brandon had signed and how I could reverse the fraud. I passed several houses until I saw a woman of about 60 watering her plants in the front yard. I approached carefully. "Excuse me," I said. She looked up. She was a woman with short gray hair, glasses, and a kind expression. "Yes. How can I help you?" she asked. "I am Isabella's mother, the one who lives 3 houses down." The woman changed her expression immediately. "Oh, that poor girl. My name is Margaret. Please, come in. We have to talk." And just like that, in the garden of a complete stranger, the second part of my plan began. The part where I stopped being the scared mother and became the woman who was going to destroy Brandon piece by piece. Margaret took me to her living room and poured me a hot tea. "Sit down, please," she told me with genuine concern in her voice. I knew something bad was happening in that house. I've been living here for 8 months, and I've seen things that have kept me up at night. I sat on her sofa, and for the first time in weeks, I felt I wasn't alone. "Tell me everything you have seen," I asked. Margaret sighed deeply. "It started about 4 months ago. I would hear screams at night. A man's voice insulting, horrible words, useless, stupid, trash. And then I would hear crying. At first I thought it was a normal couple's argument, but then I started seeing Isabella in the backyard. She always looked scared, always looking toward the house as if fearing someone was watching her. Once I saw her with a bruise on her arm. I tried to talk to her, but she practically ran back inside. "Have you seen Brandon?" I asked. Margaret nodded with disgust on her face. "That man is a conceited cockroach. He leaves every morning, dressed as if he were an executive of some major company. But I know the truth. My son works at the neighborhood bank. He told me Brandon applied for several loans using that house as collateral, large loans, and he has spent all the money on nonsense. My son says the payments are overdue, that the bank is already considering starting foreclosure proceedings if he doesn't pay soon." I felt a dagger in my chest. "So the house is in danger of being foreclosed on?" Margaret nodded. "If Brandon doesn't pay what he owes in the next 3 months, the bank is going to take the property, and your daughter is going to be left on the street, with nothing. I need proof of everything that is happening," I told her with determination. "I need to record his screams, photograph my daughter's bruises, get documents that prove the fraud." Margaret looked at me with respect. "You are a brave woman. I am going to help you. I have a security camera in my yard that points toward the street and manages to capture part of their yard. I have already recorded some things. Screams. Brandon pushing Isabella outside one night. I can share those videos with you." My heart beat faster. That would be invaluable. Margaret got up and went to her computer. She showed me several videos. In one, you could see Brandon arriving late at night, stumbling drunk. In another, his screams were clearly audible, insulting Isabella. There was one especially disturbing video where you could see Isabella sitting on the back porch crying, with her head in her hands, while Brandon yelled from inside that she should go back to clean the bathroom because it wasn't perfect. "Do you know a lawyer?" I asked. "I need legal advice to recover that house and protect my daughter." Margaret thought for a moment. "My nephew is a lawyer. He specializes in fraud and domestic violence cases. He is good at what he does and has a good heart. I can call him if you want." "Please," I responded. "I need to talk to him as soon as possible." Margaret took her phone and dialed. She spoke briefly with someone and then passed me the device. On the other end of the line, I heard a professional but warm male voice. "Good morning. My aunt tells me you need urgent help. My name is Michael Dawson. I am an attorney specializing in family law and real estate fraud. Tell me your situation." I took a deep breath and told him everything, every detail. The down payment I had paid, the house in Isabella's name, Brandon's fraud, the loans, the abuse, everything. Michael listened without interrupting. When I finished, there was a brief silence. Then he spoke with a firm voice. "Ma'am, what your son-in-law did is a federal crime. Forging documents, transferring property through fraud, using domestic violence to control his wife. All of that is legally actionable. But I need you to understand something important. These types of cases require solid evidence. Your daughter's testimony isn't enough. We need documentation, recordings, medical evidence of the beatings, witnesses." "I have some things," I responded. "Videos from a neighbor. And I can get more." "Perfect," said Michael. "Then we are going to work together. But I warn you, this is going to take time and strategy. We cannot rush. If Brandon suspects we are investigating him, he can destroy evidence or worsen the abuse toward your daughter. We need to move with intelligence." We agreed to meet the next day at his office. Margaret offered to accompany me. That night I slept better than I had slept in weeks. For the first time, I felt there was a path, that there was hope. The next day, I arrived at Michael's office at 9 in the morning. It was a modest but professional place. Michael was a man of about 40, with glasses and a serious but kind expression. He greeted me with a firm handshake. "Sit down, please. We are going to review everything step by step." He took out a notepad and started taking notes while I spoke. He asked specific questions. "Do you have receipts for the down payment?" "Yes, I have everything." "Do you have a copy of the original deed?" "Yes." "Did your daughter sign the transfer documents voluntarily?" "No, she was tricked." "Perfect. That is coercion and fraud." Michael explained the legal strategy to me. "First, we are going to request from the Recorder of Deeds all documents related to that house. We are going to review every signature, every date, every notary involved. If there are irregularities, and I am sure there are, we can challenge the property transfer. Second, we are going to document the domestic abuse. Your daughter needs to go to a forensic doctor so they can record her injuries. We need those official medical photographs. Third, we are going to collect all evidence of psychological violence, financial control, and threats. The videos the neighbor has are an excellent start. Fourth, we are going to investigate the loans Brandon requested. If he used forged documents or fraudulent information, that is another crime. And fifth, we are going to prepare a restraining order to protect your daughter when the time comes to confront him." "How long will all this take?" I asked. Michael was honest. "Between 4 and 6 weeks to gather everything necessary. But ma'am, I promise you that when we confront that man, he is going to fall in a way he will never be able to get up from. He is going to lose the house. He is going to face criminal charges. And your daughter is going to be free." I nodded. "I will do whatever is necessary." He smiled slightly. "I know. I can see the determination in your eyes. You remind me of my own mother, a woman who never gives up." I left that office with a folder full of documents I needed to get and a list of actions I had to take. The plan was in motion. Now I just needed to execute it with precision and patience. Lots of patience. Because Brandon had no idea about the storm that was forming around him. During the next 4 weeks, I became a woman on a mission. Every day off I had, I dedicated to gathering evidence against Brandon. Margaret became my most important ally. She installed a second camera in her backyard that captured Isabella's house better. Every night, we reviewed the recordings together. And what we saw was worse than I imagined. Brandon yelled every day, every single day. Not a single day passed without him insulting my daughter. He called her stupid for not ironing his shirts well. He called her useless because dinner wasn't ready exactly at 6. One night we recorded him throwing a plate of food at her because according to him it was too salty. The plate smashed against the wall, and Isabella had to clean everything up while he kept screaming. Every video I watched hardened me more, made me more determined, more relentless. I also managed to convince Isabella to visit a doctor. It was difficult because Brandon controlled her every move. But one day I told her she had a fake medical appointment with me, and I needed her to accompany me. Brandon agreed reluctantly. We went to a clinic where Michael had coordinated everything with a trusted forensic doctor. The doctor examined Isabella and documented every bruise, every wound, every mark on her body. She had bruises on her arms, on her ribs, on her back. Her hands were full of small chemical burns from cleaning products. She had a cracked rib that never healed properly. The doctor took official photographs, wrote a detailed report, and gave us certified copies of everything. When we left there, Isabella was trembling. "Mom, if Brandon finds out about this, he's going to kill me." "He isn't going to find out," I promised. "And when the time comes to use this, he won't be able to touch you ever again." Michael worked in parallel, investigating the house documents. After 2 weeks, he summoned me urgently to his office. "Elena, I found something huge." He had papers scattered on his desk. The notary who legalized the property transfer to Brandon's name was disbarred last month for forging documents in other cases. This means all documents he notarized are under automatic suspicion. Furthermore, I checked the dates of the signatures. According to the documents, your daughter signed the transfer on March 15th, but I obtained the records from the hospital where she was admitted that same day for food poisoning. There is medical proof that she couldn't have signed anything that day. It is impossible. I felt a wave of hope. "So we can prove it is fraud." Michael nodded with a smile. "Not only can we prove it, we can destroy every document Brandon presented. Everything is fake. Everything. But there was more." Michael discovered that Brandon had applied for the loans using false information about his income. He presented documents from a company that doesn't even exist. He forged bank statements. He lied about having a management job he never had. The bank still doesn't know they were deceived, but when we show them, they are going to go after Brandon with everything. Plus, I found something else. Brandon has gambling debts of over $30,000 with dangerous people, illegal loan sharks. That explains why he took out so much money in loans. It wasn't just to buy expensive things. He needed to pay those loan sharks or face grave consequences. My blood boiled. So he used my daughter's house as collateral to pay his gambling debts. "Exactly," confirmed Michael. "This man is a financial disaster waiting to explode, and your daughter is trapped in the middle of it all." Meanwhile, I kept visiting Isabella whenever I could. Always when Brandon wasn't there. Little by little, she started to recover some hope. At first, she didn't believe we could beat him. "He has all the power, Mom," she said. "He has the house in his name. He has documents. He has contacts." But I showed her every piece of evidence we were accumulating. The videos, the medical reports, the forged documents. With every piece of evidence I showed her, I saw how her gaze changed, how it went from fear to determination, how she started to believe that maybe, just maybe, we could get out of this. One afternoon she told me something that broke me and strengthened me at the same time. "Mom, all my life I saw you work like a mule. I saw you sacrifice for me without ever complaining. I thought that meant women had to endure everything. But now I see I was wrong. You didn't endure out of weakness. You endured because you were strong. And now you are teaching me that you also have to be strong to say enough. Thank you, Mom. Thank you for not abandoning me." We also needed more witnesses. Margaret introduced me to other neighbors who had noticed strange things. An older gentleman who lived next door told me Brandon parked his new car blocking his driveway constantly. When he asked him to move it, Brandon insulted him and threatened him. The gentleman had noted the dates and times of every incident. A woman who lived across the street told me she had seen Brandon arrive drunk several times and cause scenes in the street. Once he had vomited on her front lawn and never cleaned up the mess. Another neighbor told me Brandon had organized loud parties until 3 in the morning, and when they asked him to lower the volume, he threatened to call immigration, even though they were all citizens. Every testimony was one more piece of the puzzle. Every story confirmed what we already knew. Brandon wasn't just a domestic abuser. He was a violent, fraudulent man, dangerous to the whole community. 5 weeks into the investigation, Michael called me. "Elena, we are ready. We have everything we need. Documents proving the fraud, videos proving the abuse, neighbor testimonies, medical reports, bank evidence, everything. Now comes the most important part. We are going to confront him publicly. But I need you to trust me and follow the plan exactly as we designed it. If Brandon suspects something ahead of time, he can run or destroy evidence. We need to surprise him." My heart beat strongly. "Tell me what I have to do." Michael explained the plan in detail. "We are going to organize a family gathering at the house. You are going to tell Brandon you want to make peace, that you want to smooth things over, that you want to talk about the future. He is going to accept because he thinks he has everything under control. We will invite some close relatives and key neighbors as witnesses. I will be there as your lawyer. And in that meeting, in front of everyone, we are going to expose every lie, every fake document, every act of violence. We are going to take off his mask. And then we are going to take everything from him. The plan was perfect, bold, risky, but necessary. Because Brandon needed to be exposed, not just legally but socially. I needed all the people he had deceived with his facade of a successful man to see who he really was. A fraud, a thief, a coward who beat women. I accepted without hesitation. Tell me when and where. I will be ready. Michael smiled. Saturday in 2 weeks. At 11 in the morning. In the house he stole from your daughter. We are going to get it back. And he is going to lose everything. I left that office feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Power, control, justice on the horizon. Brandon had spent months believing he was invincible, that he could abuse, steal, and lie without consequences. But his reign of terror was about to collapse, and I was going to be the one to light the fuse that destroyed it all. The next 2 weeks were the longest of my life. Every day that passed was one more day Isabella had to endure that monster. But it was also one day closer to her liberation. I kept visiting her when I could, always careful that Brandon didn't suspect anything. I explained the full plan to her. At first, she panicked. Mom, if we confront him like that, he's going to go crazy. He can hurt us before the police arrive. Michael already thought of that, I explained. There is going to be a plainclothes police officer among the guests. Plus, we will have enough witnesses so he can't do anything without being exposed in front of everyone. He will be cornered. And cornered people don't attack when there are so many eyes watching them. Isabella was still scared, but she was also starting to show something I hadn't seen in months. Courage. That inner fire Brandon had tried to extinguish was reigniting. I prepared every detail with military precision. I called Brandon playing the repentant mother. I used a submissive, almost pathetic tone. Brandon, I know things between us haven't been good. I know maybe I annoyed you the last time I came to the house without warning. I want to apologize. I want you to know I appreciate everything you do for my daughter. I would like to organize a family lunch so we can get along better. It could be at your house. I'll bring the food. I just want us to be at peace. On the other end of the line, there was silence. Then Brandon let out a condescending laugh. Well, I'm glad you finally understand your place, old lady. It's fine. You can come. But make it quick. I don't have much time to waste. Saturday at 11. And bring good food. No cheap junk. He hung up without saying goodbye. I squeezed the phone tight. That man had no idea what was coming for him. I coordinated the guest list with Margaret. Besides her and Michael, we invited Mr. Henderson, the older neighbor who had records of Brandon's threats. Sarah, the neighbor from across the street, who had witnessed the scenes. Officer Miller, who had come dressed in plain clothes pretending to be a distant cousin of mine. I also invited 2 of Isabella's college friends she hadn't seen in months. They accepted immediately when I explained briefly that Isabella needed support. I didn't give them full details, but I asked them to trust me. Every invited person had a role. Some were witnesses, others were emotional support for Isabella. All together formed a net Brandon wouldn't be able to break. The trap was ready. We just needed the rat to fall into it. Friday night before the big day, I went to Margaret's house. She had prepared coffee and cookies. We sat in her living room. Elena, tomorrow is going to be a difficult day, she told me seriously. Brandon is going to react badly. He is going to deny everything. He is going to attack. He is going to try to manipulate the situation. You need to be prepared to stand firm no matter what he says. I know, I responded. I have thought of every possible reaction. I have mentally rehearsed every answer. Tomorrow he is going to see a different woman. I am no longer the submissive mother-in-law he can intimidate. I am the woman who is going to take everything from him. Margaret smiled. You remind me of myself when I confronted my ex-husband 20 years ago. He also believed he could control me forever. But there is a moment in every woman's life where she decides enough is enough. That moment is when we become unstoppable. And you, Elena, have already crossed that point. There is no turning back. That night I barely slept. Not from fear, but from anticipation. From the need for the moment of truth to arrive. At 6 in the morning, I was already awake. I showered. I dressed in simple but dignified clothes, black pants, and a white blouse. Nothing flashy. I wanted to look like the humble mother Brandon expected to see. I prepared all the food I had promised. Rice, beans, chicken with mole sauce, handmade tortillas, hibiscus tea, traditional food I had cooked all my life. But this time, every movement while cooking I did, thinking about what was coming. Every chop of the onion was an act of preparation. Every stir of the mole was a mental rehearsal of what I was going to say. At 9:30, I left my apartment with 3 large bags of food. I took the bus toward Isabella's neighborhood. My heart beat strongly but steadily. Firm. Decided. I arrived at the house at 10:40. Brandon opened the door with a fake smile. "Ah, you're early. How efficient. Come in. Come in." I entered carrying the bags. Isabella was in the kitchen. When our eyes met, I saw in her eyes a mix of terror and hope. I gave her a look that said everything. "Today it ends. Today you are free." Brandon followed me to the kitchen. "The food smells good. I hope you brought enough. Some more people are coming. You don't mind, do you?" He frowned. "Who is it? You only mentioned a small family lunch." "Yes," I responded calmly. "Some neighbors and friends of Isabella who haven't seen her in a while. I thought it would be good for you to socialize with the community." Brandon tensed up. "You didn't warn me about that. I don't like surprises, old lady." "Relax, Brandon," I said, keeping a soft tone. "It's just people who want to get to know you better. You are part of this family now. It's good that you integrate." He looked at me suspiciously, but his ego won out. Finally, he shrugged. "Whatever, let them come. Anyway, everyone is going to see how well I live." At 11 o'clock sharp, the guests started arriving. First Margaret with a salad, then Mr. Henderson with a bottle of juice, then Sarah with a dessert. Isabella's friends arrived together, hugging my daughter with tears in their eyes. Brandon received them with his fake smile, bragging about the house, pointing out the expensive furniture, the giant television. "Look at everything I have achieved," he said. "This house was a dump when we bought it. Now it's a jewel. I transformed it. I gave it value." Every word he said was a lie, and soon everyone was going to know it. Finally, Michael arrived accompanied by Officer Miller, dressed in plain clothes. Brandon greeted him without suspecting anything. Michael introduced himself as an old friend of the family, Miller as my cousin, all perfectly acted. We all sat around the dining table, 13 people in total. Brandon at the head, bragging, talking about his supposed business deals. Isabella next to him, quiet, hands trembling. Me across from Brandon, observing every gesture, every word, waiting for the exact moment. We ate in relative calm for 20 minutes. Brandon kept talking non-stop. That he had invested in real estate, that he had important contacts, that soon he was going to expand his empire. Lies upon lies. Finally, when everyone finished eating, Michael looked at me. It was the signal. I took a deep breath. It was time. I stood up slowly from my chair. Everyone went silent. Brandon looked at me strangely. "What's up, old lady? Are you going to give a speech or what?" I smiled. It was a cold smile, full of all the accumulated pain. "Yes, Brandon," I responded. "I am going to give a speech, one that is going to change your life forever." Everyone present fell silent. Brandon looked at me with a mix of confusion and arrogance. "Go ahead, mother-in-law. Surprise us with your wisdom." Some of the guests let out uncomfortable chuckles. I remained calm. I stood there, hands resting on the table, looking him directly in the eyes. "Brandon, I want to thank you for accepting this meeting, because today, in front of everyone present, we are going to clear up some very important things about this house, about the money that bought it, and about what you have really been doing these months." He frowned. "What are you talking about?" "I am talking about the fact that this house, this property you brag about as yours, was bought with $45,000 that I saved during 30 years of work, money I earned, scrubbing toilets, caring for the elderly, washing other people's clothes. Money I gave with all my heart so my daughter could have a better future." Brandon let out a forced laugh. "Yes, we all know that. You were very generous, mother-in-law, and we appreciate your help. Help, I repeated with a firm voice. It wasn't help, Brandon. It was a complete gift. I put down every penny of the down payment. This house was originally registered in Isabella's name, but you, somehow, managed to transfer ownership to your name just 2 months after you moved in. How did you do it, Brandon? How did you manage to put a house you didn't pay for in your name? The atmosphere at the table changed. People started looking at each other. Brandon shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Those are legal matters between Isabella and me. You have no reason to stick your nose in our private life. Michael stood up then. Allow me to introduce myself properly. I am Michael Dawson, an attorney specializing in real estate fraud and domestic violence. And let me tell you, Mr. Brandon, that transferring a property through forged documents is everyone's business, especially when it involves a federal crime. Brandon's face turned red. What the hell is going on here? This is an ambush. He stood up suddenly, knocking over his chair. Get out of my house, all of you. Now. Your house, Margaret intervened with a clear voice. This is not your house, Brandon, and everyone here is going to confirm it. Michael opened his briefcase and took out a thick folder full of documents. I have here certified copies of all property records. The house was originally registered on February 8th in the name of Isabella Mendez. However, on March 22nd, a property transfer appeared supposedly signed by Isabella, ceding everything to Brandon Vargas. He looked directly at Brandon. The problem is that this transfer was notarized by Mr. Ernest Campos, who was disbarred and is under federal investigation for forging documents in at least 15 different cases. All documents he notarized are being reviewed, and this is one of them. Brandon started to sweat. That doesn't prove anything. Isabella signed voluntarily. Michael smiled. Ah, then explain to me how she signed those documents on March 15th, when I have here medical reports from General Hospital confirming she was admitted that entire day for severe food poisoning. He put the medical documents on the table. Isabella was hooked up to IVs. Incapacitated. She couldn't have gone to any notary. The signatures are fake, Brandon, and you know it. The room fell completely silent. All eyes were on Brandon. He looked at Isabella seeking support. Tell them they're lying. Tell them you signed those papers of your own free will. Isabella looked at him with tears in her eyes. But this time they weren't tears of fear. They were tears of liberation. You forged my signature, Brandon. You tricked me. I never wanted to put the house in your name. You did it behind my back. Brandon slammed his hand on the table. Shut up. You don't know what you're saying. You're confused, Michael continued relentlessly. But that's not all. You also applied for 3 different loans using this house as collateral, $70,000 in total. He put the bank statements on the table. To obtain those loans, you presented false documents declaring monthly income of $12,000 from a company called Vargas Investment and Consulting. I investigated that company. It doesn't exist. It never existed. You forged bank statements. You lied about your ability to pay. That is bank fraud, Mr. Brandon, and it is punishable by federal prison. Brandon backed away. His face had gone from red to pale. You can't prove anything. These are baseless accusations. Margaret stood up then. I have proof of another nature. She took out a USB drive. On this drive, I have recordings from the last 3 months. Your voice yelling at Isabella, insulting her, calling her useless, stupid, trash. I have video of you throwing plates at her, pushing her, threatening her. Isabella's friends surrounded her immediately, hugging her. One of them spoke with a trembling voice. Isabella, is it true what they are saying? Has he been hitting you? My daughter nodded between sobs. For months, every day. He took my phone. He took my money. He forced me to quit my job. He has me trapped here cleaning this house as if I were his maid. He hits me if the food isn't perfect. He yells at me if something is out of place. And he threatened to hurt my mom if I said anything. The room erupted in indignant murmurs. Mr. Henderson stood up, pointing at Brandon. I have also been a victim of his threats. He told me if I complained again about his car blocking my driveway, he was going to have me deported. I've been a U.S. citizen for 30 years. But he didn't care. He threatened me anyway. Sarah added, He threatened to call the police and falsely accuse me of selling drugs just because I asked him to lower the volume of his parties. This man is a thug. Brandon started to get desperate. You are all lying. This is a plot. Isabella, tell them they are lying. Tell them I am a good husband, that I take care of you, that I give you everything you need. Isabella stood up. Her voice no longer trembled. You give me nothing, Brandon. You stole everything from me. You stole the house my mother bought for me. You stole my dignity. You stole months of my life. You turned me into your slave. She rolled up her sleeves, showing the bruises that still had visible marks. This is what you give me: pain, fear, humiliation. But today it ends. Today I take back my life. Isabella's crying was loud but liberating. Her friends hugged her while Brandon looked around, seeking some exit, some ally. But everyone in that room looked at him with repulsion, with disgust, with contempt. I took the floor again. Brandon, we also discovered your gambling debts. $30,000 you owe to illegal loan sharks. That's why you took out those loans, right? Not to improve the house, not to invest, but to pay your debts before they broke your legs. Brandon shook his head violently. That is a lie. Everything you say is a lie. Michael took out more documents. I have the names of 3 people who have confirmed you owe them money. They are willing to testify. One of them showed me messages where you beg him for more time to pay. Another has a promissory note signed by you. Do you want me to present them too? Brandon started to tremble. He was no longer the arrogant and confident man who had opened the door. He was a cornered criminal, an exposed coward, a fraud revealed before everyone. And the best part was that he knew he had no escape. Every lie had been unmasked, every crime documented, every threat recorded. His reign of terror had ended. Brandon tried one last desperate move. He turned to Isabella with a pleading voice. Babe, don't believe them. They are trying to separate us. Everything I have done has been for us, for our future. Yes, I made mistakes, but it was because I wanted to give you a good life. Forgive me. We can fix this together. Isabella looked at him with a mixture of pity and repulsion. You hit me, Brandon. You humiliated me. You robbed me. And now you want me to forgive you as if nothing happened? No, I am no longer the scared woman you could manipulate. It's over. Brandon immediately changed tactics. His face transformed into fury. Ungrateful bitch. I gave you everything. Without me, you would be nothing. This house, these furniture, all this exists because of me. And this is how you pay me, bringing these snakes into my own house to humiliate me. Miller, the police officer, finally identified himself. He raised his badge. Mr. Vargas, I am Officer Miller, and I recommend you calm down immediately. Any threat or violent act you commit right now will be used against you. Brandon went pale upon seeing the badge. You planned all this. It's a trap. Exactly, I responded with a cold voice. A very well thought out trap. Because men like you only understand when the power they think they have is taken away. For months you abused my daughter, believing no one was going to stop you, believing you were untouchable. But you were wrong. You underestimated a mother who would give everything to protect her daughter. And you underestimated a community that doesn't tolerate abusers. Michael continued. Mr. Brandon, besides everything presented here, I have a court order invalidating the property transfer. A judge reviewed the case and determined there was coercion and fraud. The house automatically reverts to the name of Isabella Mendez. You no longer have any legal right to this property. He took out the official document and put it on the table. Brandon looked at it as if it were a death sentence. This can't be legal. I'm going to appeal. I'm going to hire lawyers. I'm going to fight this. You can try, said Michael calmly. But I warn you that when the bank finds out you obtained $70,000 through fraud, they are going to file criminal charges. When the illegal loan sharks know you are being investigated, they are going to come to collect in less civilized ways. And when the judicial system processes all the evidence of domestic violence, document forgery, and bank fraud, you will face between 5 and 15 years in federal prison. So go ahead, hire lawyers, spend the money you don't have. You will only dig the hole deeper. Brandon looked around seeking support, but only found looks of disgust. Mr. Henderson spoke with a firm voice. Everyone in this neighborhood is going to testify against you. We are tired of your threats, your scenes, your lack of respect." Sarah added, "I am going to file a formal lawsuit for the threats you made against me. I already spoke to my lawyer." Margaret closed the circle. "And I am going to hand over all the recordings to the police and the district attorney. Your face is going to be on all the news as the fraud and abuser that you are." Brandon slumped in his chair. His world was collapsing before his eyes. But I wasn't finished yet. I approached him, leaned down to be at his level, and spoke in a low voice but full of power. "You underestimated me, Brandon. You thought that because I am an older woman, because I clean houses for a living, because I speak with an accent, I had no power. You thought you could abuse my daughter without consequences. But let me tell you something. I survived things you can't even imagine. I crossed borders. I worked 18 hours a day. I raised a daughter alone. I saved every damn penny for 30 years. And if you think I am going to allow a parasite like you to destroy all that, you are very wrong." I straightened up and spoke so everyone could hear. "Starting this moment, Brandon, you are going to pack your things and get out of this house. You have 2 hours. Whatever you don't take, we are going to donate or throw away. I don't want to see you near my daughter ever again." Brandon tried to resist. "I can't leave. I have rights. This is my house too." Miller stepped forward. "Sir, technically you are trespassing on a property that is no longer yours. If you do not leave voluntarily, I will have to arrest you for trespassing. Choose." Brandon looked at Isabella one last time. His face showed rage, humiliation, and some fear. Isabella held his gaze without blinking. "Get out, Brandon, and never come back." He got up abruptly, knocked some objects off the table in a last act of childish rage, and stomped up the stairs. We heard him opening and closing drawers violently, throwing things, cursing under his breath. Margaret and Sarah stayed close to Isabella, holding her, giving her strength. Michael and Miller watched the stairs, ready to intervene if Brandon tried anything violent. Mr. Henderson and I gathered the documents from the table, organizing them carefully. Every paper was proof. Every fake signature was one more nail in Brandon's legal coffin. 30 minutes later, Brandon came down the stairs, dragging 2 suitcases. His face was composed. Nothing remained of the arrogant man who had opened the door 2 hours earlier. He was just a defeated criminal. He stopped at the door and looked at us all. "You are going to regret this. All of you. I'm going to come back and I'm going to make you pay." Miller stepped forward. "That was a direct threat, Mr. Vargas. It was recorded in front of multiple witnesses. I suggest you leave before I decide to arrest you right now." Brandon left, slamming the door. We watched him get into his car and speed away. When the sound of the engine faded, the house fell silent. A different silence. A silence of peace, of liberation. Isabella let herself fall onto the sofa, and for the first time in months, she cried without fear. She cried, releasing all the accumulated pain. Her friends hugged her. Margaret brought her a glass of water. I sat next to her and stroked her hair, like when she was a little girl. Michael began to explain the next legal steps. "We are going to file a permanent restraining order against Brandon. He won't be able to get within 100 yards of this house or Isabella. We are also going to notify the bank about the fraud. They are going to cancel the illegally obtained loans. Isabella won't be responsible for those debts. And we are going to work with the prosecutor's office so Brandon faces criminal charges. With all the evidence we have, prison is almost certain." Mr. Henderson asked, "And if he tries to come back? If he tries to hurt Isabella?" Miller responded, "That's why I am going to do regular patrols through this neighborhood for the next few weeks. And Isabella has my direct number. At the first sign that Brandon is approaching, I will be here in minutes." Margaret offered, "I am going to keep the security cameras active. If he shows up around here, it will be recorded immediately. Isabella isn't alone. All of us are going to protect her." Sarah stood up. "I am going to organize a neighborhood watch chain. We are all going to be on the lookout. If we see Brandon's car or any suspicious activity, we will alert each other immediately. This neighborhood looks after its own, and Isabella is one of us." Isabella's friends also promised to visit her regularly. "We aren't going to let you isolate yourself again," they told her. We are going to be here for you, always. I looked at everyone present. My heart filled with gratitude. Thank you, I said with an emotional voice. Thank you all for helping us, for believing in us, for not turning away when my daughter needed help. You gave us hope back. Margaret hugged me. Women take care of each other, Elena. That's how it should be. Michael put away his documents. I will be in constant contact. Anything you need, don't hesitate to call me. This case sets a precedent. We are going to make sure Brandon pays for everything he did, and we are going to recover every penny he stole. That night, after everyone left, Isabella and I stayed alone in the house. It was the first time in months she was there without fear, without tension, without having to walk on tiptoes so as not to bother her executioner. We sat on the sofa. She rested her head on my shoulder. Thank you, Mom, she whispered, for not abandoning me, for fighting for me, for teaching me that I deserve better. I hugged her tight. Daughter, you have always deserved the best, and now you are going to have it. We are going to get your life back. You are going to go back to work. You are going to smile again. You are going to be you again. And never, never again are you going to allow someone to treat you like that. She nodded. Never again, Mom. I promise. We stayed like that, hugging, until night fell completely. It was the end of a nightmare, but it was also the beginning of a new life. A life where my daughter was free, where justice had prevailed, where the abuser had fallen. The following days were of reconstruction. Isabella and I spent the weekend cleaning the house of all of Brandon's presents. We took out the clothes he had left and donated them. We took down the photos where he appeared and threw them in the trash. We moved the furniture so the layout would be different. We wanted the house to feel like a fresh start, like a space that finally belonged to Isabella without the shadows of her abuser. Margaret came to help us. She brought new plants for the garden, brightly colored flowers that gave life to the place. Sarah arrived with new curtains. Something more cheerful, she said. So more light comes in. Little by little the house transformed. It was no longer the cold and ostentatious palace Brandon had created. It was a warm home, a refuge, a place where my daughter could breathe without fear. The following Monday, Michael summoned us to his office with news. The bank reviewed all the documents and confirmed the fraud. They have officially canceled the 3 loans Brandon obtained illegally. Isabella has no responsibility for those debts. Furthermore, they are pressing criminal charges against Brandon for bank fraud. Isabella sighed with relief. So the house is safe. Completely, confirmed Michael. The property is registered in your name without any associated debt. It is yours, free and clear. I also have good news about the restraining order. It was approved by the judge. Brandon cannot get within 100 yards of you, your house, your work, or any place where you are. If he does, he will be arrested immediately. And there is more. The district attorney's office decided to take the case. They are going to prosecute Brandon for domestic violence, document forgery, bank fraud, and coercion. With all the evidence we presented, the prosecutor is confident in getting a sentence of at least 8 years in prison. 8 years, I repeated. He deserves it. He deserves every day of those 8 years and more. Michael nodded. They will probably get more time when they present the debts with the illegal loan sharks. That opens another line of investigation into money laundering and criminal activities. Brandon dug his own grave. And the best thing is that several of his supposed friends, the ones who came to the parties and laughed while he humiliated Isabella, are cooperating with the authorities to avoid being prosecuted as accomplices. Brandon not only lost his freedom, he lost all respect, his entire network of contacts, his entire facade of a successful man. Now everyone knows who he really is: a fraud, a criminal, a coward. I stood up and shook Michael's hand. Thank you for everything you have done for us. I don't know how we are going to pay you. Michael smiled. Seeing justice served is payment enough for me. Besides, my Aunt Margaret wouldn't let me charge you a penny. She says you are family now. The following weeks brought more positive changes. Isabella started looking for work again. She updated her resume with the help of her friends. Despite the time she was out of the job market, her experience and education were still valuable. After 3 interviews, she got a position at a financial consulting firm. The salary was good, better than her previous job. Her boss was a woman who valued talent and effort. The first day of work, Isabella arrived home with shining eyes. "Mom, I forgot what it felt like to be treated with respect, to be valued for what I know how to do. Today my boss congratulated me on an analysis I did. She told me I did an excellent job, and I almost cried because it had been so long since anyone said something positive to me." I hugged her. "Daughter, that is just the beginning. You are going to remember who you were before Brandon, and you are going to be even better." We also recovered her social life. Her college friends integrated her back into their group. They went out to dinner, went to the movies, met for coffee and conversation. Isabella started laughing again, that genuine laugh I hadn't heard since before she got married. One day she told me, "Mom, I realized I lost so much time, years of my life, trying to please a man who was never going to be satisfied, who was never going to value me. But I'm not going to live like that anymore. I am going to live for me. I am going to be happy for myself. I don't need anyone to complete me. I am already complete." Her words filled me with pride. My daughter had been reborn from the ashes, stronger, wiser, more aware of her own worth. Brandon had tried to destroy her, but he only managed to forge her in steel. As for Brandon, the news that arrived was satisfying. He was formally arrested 2 weeks after the confrontation. Margaret called me excited. "Elena, they just took Brandon out of his apartment in handcuffs. There were TV cameras. He's going to be on the evening news." Indeed, that night we saw a report on the news about a real estate fraud and domestic violence case. They showed Brandon's photo being led away by police. The reporter explained he had been accused of multiple crimes, that he faced years in prison, that several victims had presented testimony against him. His face was everywhere, on the internet, in the local papers. All his business contacts, his acquaintances, the people he had fooled with his image of a successful man, now knew the truth. His reputation was destroyed, his future cancelled, his freedom lost. And I didn't feel pity. I felt justice. The trial was fast. With all the evidence presented, Brandon's defense had no arguments. He tried to claim it was all a misunderstanding, that Isabella had signed the documents voluntarily, but the medical reports proved otherwise. He tried to say there was never violence, but the videos, the photographs, the testimonies of multiple witnesses destroyed that lie. He tried to justify the fraudulent loans, saying he intended to pay them, but the bank records showed he spent everything on personal luxuries and gambling debts. The judge listened to everything with a serious expression. When the time came for the verdict, he spoke with a clear and firm voice. "Brandon Vargas, you have been found guilty of bank fraud, document forgery, aggravated domestic violence, and coercion. These are grave offenses that demonstrate a pattern of abusive, manipulative, and criminal behavior. Taking into account the severity of your crimes and the lack of remorse shown, I sentence you to 12 years in prison without the possibility of parole before serving 8 years. Isabella and I were in the courtroom when the sentence was read. She squeezed my hand tightly. When Brandon was led out of the room in handcuffs, he looked at us with hatred. But we were no longer afraid of him. His gaze no longer had power over us. He was just a defeated man, facing the consequences of his own actions. We left the courthouse, and the sun was shining brightly. Isabella took a deep breath. "It's over, Mom. It's really over," I nodded. "Yes, honey, it's over." And now the good part begins. Margaret, Michael, Sarah, Mr. Henderson, and Isabella's friends were waiting for us outside. They hugged us. They congratulated us. We all went to eat to celebrate. We weren't celebrating revenge. We were celebrating justice. We were celebrating freedom. We were celebrating that good can win when good people unite and fight. Months later, life had found a new rhythm. Isabella was thriving in her job. She had received 2 promotions. Her boss considered her one of the most valuable employees. Isabella also started therapy to process all the trauma lived. Little by little, she healed the emotional wounds. I kept working, but now with more tranquility, knowing my daughter was okay, that she was safe, that she was happy. The house became a place for gatherings. Margaret and I became close friends. We drank coffee together every Sunday. Isabella's friends came over frequently. The neighborhood that was previously just a collection of houses was now a community, a network of people who looked out for each other. One Saturday afternoon, Isabella and I were in the garden planting roses. She looked at me and smiled. "Mom, I want you to know something. You saved my life, but more than that, you taught me that it is never too late to defend oneself, that we must never accept abuse as something normal, that we deserve respect, dignity, and love. Thank you for being the strongest woman I know, for teaching me to be strong too." I hugged her with tears in my eyes. "Daughter, you were always strong. You just needed to remember it. And now, look at everything you have achieved. You have your house, your job, your freedom, your happiness. This is what I always wanted for you." We stayed there, hugging in the garden that was now blooming with life. I thought about the whole journey, about the 30 years of work, about the $45,000 saved, about the pain of seeing my daughter suffer, about the rage of discovering the abuse, about the determination to fight, about the victory of seeing justice served, and I knew it had all been worth it. Because in the end, we didn't just recover a house, we recovered our dignity, our strength, our life. And no one, absolutely no one, would ever take it from us again. This was our victory. This was our story. And it ended not with revenge, but with something much more powerful. It ended with freedom, with justice, and with the certainty that when women unite and fight, they can overcome any darkness.